In the not-too-distant future, population growth and climate change have wreaked havoc on the planet. The Unification Ranger Corps is established to organize the evacuation of the Earth, and humanity is given the opportunity to settle in the space colony Nova Prime. A race of aliens known as Skrull sends a group of Ursas to invade since they see that humans are now exposed. While they are blind, these deadly predators, known as Ursas, can hunt by detecting the chemicals that humans emit when they are alarmed. Using their swords, the Rangers battle the Ursas to stop the invasion, and Prime Commander Cypher, who has learned to control his emotions, emerges as a hero, by exhibiting no fear. This process of becoming undetectable to the Ursas is called ghosting. Cypher's son Katai is a cadet in the Ranger Academy a few years after the war because he wants to be like his father. He exerts extra effort even during the most straightforward tests, like jogging, to demonstrate his uniqueness. Although Katai received excellent exam results, he isn't performing well on the pitch, and as a result, he hasn't yet received the promotion to Ranger that he desired. As Cypher returns from a mission later that evening, Katai informs him that he was unsuccessful in getting promoted. As usual, Cypher does not comfort his son, remaining frigid and remarking that Katai must not have been prepared because the commander possesses expertise. Cypher constantly displays a chilly demeanor towards his family, as if he doesn't know how to switch off the soldier mentality. He even commands Katai at the dinner table and demands that he always address him as sir. During dinner, Cypher tells his wife Faya that he would be departing the following day for Ifido to train cadets and brings her a gift he received from the mission. He does, however, plan to retire and join her in the administrative division after that task is completed. Faya expresses her delight at this and notes that Katai needs him to spend more time with him, interact with him, and not be so distant. Instead of a superior, Katai wants a father. She believes Katai harbors numerous insecurities, because he feels responsible for Senchi's passing. He reads Moby Dick, her favorite book, in an effort to connect with her. In light of this, Cypher approaches Katai and offers to accompany him to Ifido. Later, as the crew prepares to depart, Katai spots a ranger approaching his father and thanking him for saving him during the battle with the Ursas. The ranger has one leg severed. Even if Cypher believes it is unnecessary, the ranger nonetheless asks his friends to assist him in standing up so he can properly salute the savior of humanity. When the journey begins, Katai tries to get in touch with his father by letting him know he's reading Moby Dick, but Cypher doesn't like to communicate much and gives terse, unfeeling responses. He then advises Katai to rest for the remainder of the voyage. As Cypher is dozing off, Katai leaves his seat to look around the ship while pretending to be submissive. As he discovers a mystery region with caution signs, the enforcing rangers reprimand him right away. They let him in to examine their cargo, which turns out to be an Ursa that will be used to teach the cadets how to ghost. After they realize he is Cypher's son, the ranger challenges Katai, touch the Ursa's shell to test his emotional control. But as Katai approaches, he starts to remember the night his sister passed away. Senchi put Katai in a glass container when an Ursa invaded their house to prevent the monster from smelling him. The Ursa notices Katai's anxiety as he is ready to touch the shell and roars at him, stunning him into backing away. Meanwhile, Cypher awakens and feels some odd vibrations. To confirm impending danger, he leans his ring against the ship's wall. Katai is told to put on his life jacket and fasten himself to his seat while he quickly tells the rangers to be on high alert. Then the pilots are informed by Cypher, in the cockpit, that they are approaching an asteroid storm. The spacecraft starts to shake as the asteroids hit it, losing an engine before they can change direction. In order to get to a different anchorage, Cypher commands the pilots to enter the closest wormhole. The ship safely exits the wormhole and arrives close to Earth, where it is against the law for anyone to return due to the dangers. The pilots explain that because the spacecraft has sustained too much damage, they must land as soon as possible. Cypher wants to go somewhere else. The ship starts shaking once more as it approaches Earth's atmosphere, and Katai Cypher instructs him to take deep breaths to help him calm down when he panics. At that instant, the spacecraft starts to disintegrate, and Katai passes out as Cypher is carried away by the wind. Katai wakes up a short while later to find the ship has crashed. He gets up to hunt for the other rangers, but all of them are already dead when he finds them. Fortunately, he locates Cypher and discovers that he is still alive. Katai then waits for Cypher to awaken by his side. When Cypher awakens, Katai informs him that the ship's tail has vanished, indicating that the Ursa has also vanished. Katai follows Cypher to the cockpit to locate the emergency beacon, but when he uses it, he learns it's damaged. Cypher then checks the inventory and confirms there is another beacon in the ship's tail, before Katai places him on a stretcher and carries him to the ship's main computer. Given that he has injuries to both of his legs, Cypher assigns Katai the task of locating the tail, which the scanner indicates is around 100 kilometers away. After that, Katai receives his blade, in addition to 6 bottles of air filtration inhalers, that will aid in his ability to breathe in the hazardous atmosphere of Earth. Also, he tells him that there are cameras in both the life jacket and the backpack, so Cypher will see whatever Katai sees. The youngster must exercise extreme caution, because everything on Earth has developed to kill people. It brings back for Katai the painful memory of having to watch an Ursa kill his sister. Cypher responds that the Ursa they were carrying must have perished in the collision when Katai inquires about it, but it is safer to suppose that it is still somewhere in the world. Katai departs the spacecraft after using one of the inhalers and becomes anxious, since he can see all the bodies around. To soothe him, Cypher urges him to bend down and reminds him to focus on the present in order to face his worries. So Katai starts his expedition, which gives him the opportunity to encounter several species he has never seen before. He is frightened by a spider on his hand as he climbs a cliff, and when he reaches the top, he is treated to views of cows grazing on the plains and birds soaring across the sky. It's an incredible view, especially for someone who has spent their entire life in space. The Ursa is then sought after by a number of probes, and Katai is informed by Cypher that nighttime temperatures drop precipitously. Before it gets dark, he needs to locate one of the many hot spots in order to survive. Next, Cypher scans himself. He examines his injuries and discovers that his leg bones are broken, which prompts him to think about taking painkillers. Cypher is reminded of the moment his daughter contacted him while he was in the military by the labels warning that the shot can make him drowsy and impair his vision. An original copy of Moby Dick had been discovered by Senshi, which was significant, because authentic books were no longer readily available. Cypher had reacted angrily to her enthusiasm, and now that he's beginning to think about it, he chooses not to take the medication. Katai realizes his suit has become black after a short while. It has motion sensors, Cypher explains, and the color black indicates that a life form is headed towards him. Cypher tells Katai to remain motionless as a huge baboon suddenly appears from the trees. The baboons all emerge and start throwing rocks at Katai. When he chooses to throw a rock at it in an effort to scare it away, in order to prevent the baboons from pursuing him, Cypher directs the youngster towards the closest river, while he starts to run as quickly as he can. Katai swiftly crosses the river, but despite the baboons no longer pursuing him, he continues to run. Because of his anxiety and fear, he is holding his sword out to get him to stop and take the knee so he can calm down. Cypher has to holler at him. At that point, Katai's bloodstream contains toxins, and Cypher observes this and instructs his son to examine Katai. Katai finds a leech on his palm and removes it right away, but the toxin is still present in his body. When Cypher instructs him to administer the antidote, Katai has to drop his body on the needle to make it stick and passes out as a result since he is losing feeling in his hands. Some hours later, Cypher discovers, as the temperature drops, Katai is forced to wake up in order to locate a hotspot, which is located 10 kilometers distant. While Cypher watches his son, Katai starts sprinting as quickly as he can. Cypher hears the computer tell Katai that he requires an artery shunt to treat his leg. Once more, Cypher rejects the medication and endures the procedure's discomfort instead. He considers Senshi's 19th birthday party, which he was forced to witness through a screen since he was on a mission. As he works, Cypher only agreed to blow out the candles on Senshi's cake. After much negotiation, that begs because younger Katai blew the candles for him. They were out. When Katai finally arrives at the hotspot, he inspects his gear and notices 2 of his inhalers are broken, but he tells his father he has all of them while in fact just having one. Cypher observes a response on the screen that would suggest lying, but he stays silent. In order to ask his father how he was able to ghost during the war, Katai grabs a vial and hides under a tree. As it starts to rain, Cypher claims that an Ursa once used its pincer to stab him in the shoulder, and while they struggled, they both tumbled into the river. The Ursa attempted to drown him, but the pincer arrived, as Cypher accepted his demise. Due to the Ursa's inability to locate him anymore, Cypher had realized that while anger may exist, fear is merely something that people imagine for the future. Cypher sends Katai to the waterfall the following morning. Since the probes have discovered some intriguing readings, a group of dead monkeys Katai encounters en route serves as evidence of a bigger threat. As soon as Katai reaches the falls, Cypher forces him to check his inventory, and Katai makes another attempt to lie about the inhalers. Katai is given the order to abort the expedition. After Cypher calls out his lying and performs some calculations that show he won't be able to complete it without the inhalers, Katai starts to consider his options. Nevertheless, the condor follows Katai as he leaves the cave the following morning. Believing it desires to assault, Katai starts to flee, and he soon needs to use his final inhaler. Katai then constructs a small raft to travel downstream. In his nightmares, Senshi appears next to him when he is sleeping, and he tries to explain to her that, on the day of her passing, he almost escaped the containment to assist her. Senshi doesn't believe him, but she doesn't mind because she believes that by rescuing himself, he made the right decision. She also believes that Cypher is upset with himself over what transpired. Katai next tries to recite Moby Dick to demonstrate that he has been reading it. Senshi, however, yells at him to get up. When Katai opens his eyes, he sees that the raft has arrived at the shore. As the temperature begins to plummet, Katai scrambles to find a hot spot, but he isn't quick enough and collapses to the ground as the plants around him begin to freeze. Katai fears that he will perish, but when he awakens in the morning, he finds something on top of him that has kept him warm. It is the condor, which sacrificed itself to save him in recompense for protecting its young. Katai thanks the creature and proceeds on his way. Finding a piece of air to breathe is becoming difficult, but he is motivated to continue by the ship that is on the ground. Katai finds the ship's tail a little while later and grabs another sword and some more inhalers right afterwards. He further explores the area and discovers that the Ursa shell is open, indicating that the monster has fled. Cypher is daydreaming about young Katai giving him his own blade back on the ship. Katai's voice abruptly wakes him awake because he discovered a communicator and the beacon in the ship's tail. As Katai is in the black zone, Cypher tries to speak to him, but he is unable to be heard. Despite not being aware of this, Katai attempts to use the beacon but it is unsuccessful. Katai starts to have a tantrum out of frustration and desperation, but soon after, he recalls his father's advice and takes a knee to calm himself. Katai realizes there is an interference in the area and that climbing the nearby volcano will allow him to activate the beacon without interference. On his way to the volcano, Katai discovers the body of a ranger. With the Ursa left behind to frighten him and activate his pheromones, Katai tries to ignore it and continues until he reaches the volcano's base, where he tries and fails to launch the beacon again. Cypher notices Ursa on the scanner and hopes his son acts quickly before he is discovered. Then Katai enters a cave in order to find a way to the volcano's summit. Inside, the Ursa is waiting for him when he arrives, and it strikes him right away before becoming stuck. Beneath a pile of boulders, Katai decides to hide in a body of water as the Ursa frees itself and hunts him as he starts to run. Back on board, the computer begins to malfunction, denying Cypher access to the medical care and forcing him to start losing consciousness. Katai, meantime, is swimming in the direction of a light source that would enable him to surface into a pit. The Ursa abruptly comes out of the water and grabs the rope, as he begins to climb it to reach the top of the volcano. Foot of a boy, the beast is kicked back into the water by Katai, who then completes climbing the hole to reach the outside. As soon as Katai tries to turn on the beacon, the Ursa reappears and leaps on him, kicking him in the rocky areas and forcing him to drop the device. Katai remembers the time Senshi shielded him and all the tips Cypher has given him, while he writhes on the ground in agony. This memory helps Katai focus and go through his anxiety so he can ghost. When the creature loses sight of him, Katai uses the opportunity to attack it with his blade by confusing it. It just takes Kaita a few focused blows to eventually kill the beast, because it is powerless to protect itself. All of this is observed by Cypher before he permanently loses consciousness. After that, Katai finally activates the beacon, and the Rangers show up to save them in a short while. Although Katai is concerned about his father, he finds out he is alright. Katai rushes to embrace his father, as he declares his desire to collaborate with his mother, but Cypher struggles to stand up out of respect for his bold kid. Cypher answers by hugging back for the first time ever and saying that he, too, wants to retire. The end. If you like this story, please subscribe to the channel and like it, to motivate me to bring you more stories like this.